Thanks for joining us.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Queens is a lot of Jews live in Queens, and it's unique that there is a race for assembly in a special election September 12th, which pits two Orthodox Jews against one another. We're speaking with Sam Berger, who is running as a Democrat for the seat held by Assemblyman Dan Rosenthal, who's moved on to Jewish communal life, and the district encompasses Kew Garden Hills, College Point, Whitestone, Pomonac, Assembly District 27. Sam Berger, thank you for joining us. He's worked as a lawyer with the Kings County Surrogates Courts, Queens County Supreme Court criminal team, and he's active in the community. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So this is unique. You don't often have two Orthodox Jews running against each other, one as a Republican, one as a Democrat. It happened in the Five House not too long, but generally not. Has that made your campaign harder or easier for you?
Certainly harder, because you have to be very careful. You know, when you're two Orthodox Jews, you have to be very careful about the things that you say and the strategy that you put forth. A lot of this is, trying to make a Kiddush Hashem and of trying to avoid a Chil Hashem. And it's a really hard line to walk, especially in politics.
So how do you walk it? Because the truth is, in politics, especially Democrats versus Republicans, it gets dirty. They look to attack their opponent and as much dirt as they can find, because that's the belief of the political operatives, that the more dirt you have on the opponent, the more of a chance you have of winning. So how do you get around that? Because that's the nature of politics.
Right. So there's two parts. One, I think a lot of it is that there's, petty things that you feel that you can do, or that you want to do, or that you need to do, and they're not really necessary, and they don't really help in the overall strategy. So it's been avoiding doing anything that would be petty, and I would say it's been making the campaign overall a positive policies, positive change, rather than what are the problems on the other side, what are the issues. It's the issues are here, and it's about how we're going to deal with it. It's people want positive solutions, not just a blame game.
But here's the challenge, is that generally speaking in elections, unless you have a presidential race, you don't have as many people going out to vote. A small number determine the outcome. Here you're having a special election where you don't have even a mayor or a governor or somebody else to pull to the ticket. So you really got to motivate people to come out and vote on election day. So a small number, and even smaller number than normally vote, are going to determine the race. So when you take out the element of attack, I think you probably have less people. For some reason, the attacks get more people worked up to go. So you have an additional challenge, because now if you're running a positive campaign, and I assume both you and your opponent are not going negative, so then you have a bigger challenge getting people out and say, why should I come out to, September 12th? That's the election day. I have so much to do. It's the Jewish New Year. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's back to school. So how do you get around that?
So in the Orthodox Jewish community, the positive message generally works because I've lived here in Kew Garden Hills my entire life, and my parents have been very heavily involved in the community. My mother being a longtime high school teacher at Shevach High School, which is a local girls' high school. And my father has been for over 25 years the president of Benos Malka, which is a local girls' elementary school. People know them, or they know some of my siblings, or they know me. So getting the support, a lot of it has just been getting people to realize who's running, right? That this is, and everyone who knows me, knows my family, knows what we're about. And there's an energy there of we're going to go and we're going to make positive change, because people are just tired right now of the extremes. And so I'm working as a moderate voice to try and just pull us back to some common sense for the country, and stop making it about the far right or the far left, and making about what are the local issues and focusing on that. And that's been energizing. It is tough, but I think a lot of people feel the weight of losing Daniel Rosenthal, all the good that he's done for the district, and they understand what's at stake here. And so it's just been getting that message across. But that's why we've been working, for the past however long this campaign has been going on, for a month and a half. We've been working to talk to as many people who live here as possible and get that message across of why this race is important. Because at the end of the day,
go ahead.
At the end of the day, your local officials are the ones who will most closely affect your day-to-day life. And that's why this is important.
Between your father and mother working in girls' education, I guess you want to have a lock on the Orthodox Jewish women's vote?
Oh, yeah. I have 4 sisters. I have 2 daughters. So we're definitely within that group.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty, because number one, the Orthodox Jewish community plays an important role in this race, but there are other ethnic groups. You have the Chinese and the Bukharian community, which I'm not sure how much are there in the area. I know they're expanding greatly, I think, in some of the area that you cover. So let's look at your outreach in general to the Orthodox community, which you said you're going to shul, you're going to a lot of Kedushim, I assume, but also outreach to your ethnic neighbors, and I think they're going to play a role too.
Right. I think part of it, and one of my strengths coming into this as more of a younger politician, is I think my generation is a little bit more willing to talk to people who don't necessarily look like you or believe the same things that you believe, and work together. So there are younger people that are in politics on the side of the Asian community, and I've been working with Congresswoman Grace Meng to try and understand that community and their issues, and a lot of their values are very similar to the Jewish community. So there's a lot that we have that we can work on together, and there's a desire for the 2 communities to work together. So I've been making inroads in that in regard to them. In the African American Black community, we've been talking to people who live, folks in Pamanok, working with the Residents Association there, and the wonderful women who are running that, and talking about the ways that we can help that community as well. It's about finding the compromises and the things that we can all agree on, that we can work on together, because a lot of those basics when it comes to public safety or education or affordability, those are all basic values that almost everyone shares. And so there's been a lot of support in trying to garner that support from other communities. I would say in the Bukharian community, I've had a little bit of experience having my father's school is very mixed of Ashkenazim and Bukharian Jews. So I have a little sense for what the politics are there. And a lot of it has just been working to, meet the people, the different leaders within the Bukharian community, try and talk and try and understand where they're coming from and have that conversation and make them feel heard.
It's a separate conversation we can have, and this is not just you, it goes beyond you, is that I don't think we've done a good job integrating the Bukharian community to the general Jewish community. We have a Bukharian radio show, we're trying to do that, but it seems we have such large numbers in the Bukharian community, there probably should, this is beyond the scope of your election, obviously, but to really incorporate more of them into the Jewish community, I think it works well for them, works well for us if we're able to do that. And so far we haven't done a good job yet. I guess you agree with me about that.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a must. As Jews, we need to work together, and we can't be, if we're divided on our own end, it's not good for anyone. And at the end of the day, we're all Jews, so there's a lot of common ground there. We just have to work to see eye to eye and to integrate ourselves with each other and get to know each other better. And it does need work. It does take time. It is beyond the scope of this election, but it is something that is definitely on my eye. That's something I want to work towards.
We're looking at a special election in Queens, September 12th. We're looking for the seat to replace Assemblyman Dan Rosenthal to about Assembly District 27. Sam Berger is our guest. He is running on the Democratic line. He's a product of the community and wants to be the next assemblyman. Sim, I want to get personal. What made you decide you want to get involved in politics? It seems a lot less people want to get involved these days. So what motivates you to roll up your sleeves and say, I'm going to get into the political arena?
So I've been living here in Kew Garden Hills my entire life, except for about three and a half years after high school when I was living in the old city in Israel. This has been my home, and now I'm married and I have 2 little girls, and this is going to be my home. My parents are people who have been always very invested in the community, in working to build a more prosperous community. And I was raised with the value that if you can help people, you should help people. You should always try to help people. I only went into law because my father is also an attorney. And I saw, as I got older, I realized the incredible work that he was able to do for people, being able to help a lot of people within the community as a lawyer. So when they said when I was applying for law school, why do you want to go to law school? I said, I don't really care for law, but I care for helping people. If you can put me in a position or in a type of law where I can be doing that, then that's where I want to be. And I was able to work in the Kings County Surrogates Court dealing with trusts and estates. And I was able to work with Judge Kirshner in the Queens County Supreme Court in the criminal term, working, dealing with gun crimes. And I found that it really didn't have to do with the type of genre of law that I was working with. As long as I was making, felt like I was being able to make a difference, right, then I was happy. When Daniel Rosenthal was stepping down, I met with him and we talked about what the job is and what it can be and what you can do for the community. And I said, okay, then, that's something that I want to do. The job of a legislature is when you boil it down to its fundamentals is you're drafting law or modifying law. As a lawyer, I've learned how to apply the law. So this is not something that it's not really a far stretch when it comes to understanding the actual technical lingo of what it is that we're doing. I have the headspace for it.
So what are some of the issues that you're hearing from people when you're going out on the campaign trail? What are people telling you with the Kedushim or when you're out there? What is the thing that motivates the people most that they would consider coming out and voting on election? And I urge people, you have to vote on September 12th, but a lot of people unfortunately get caught up. But what do you hear is the major things that interest people?
It's public safety is the number one. Everyone is there's just a sense within the city that, of danger right now, that there's a feeling that, you can get away with anything. And right now in this district, particularly, car thefts are the big deal. And it's that just a sense of fear. When you walk into different stores and things are behind locked cabinets, right? It's not a good feeling. People don't feel necessarily safe. And so we're working towards making, dealing with a lot of the quality of life crimes that pop up. That's why I'm very humbled to have the endorsement of the New York City's police union, as well as the detectives union, the lieutenants union, as well as the state troopers union, the firefighters, I believe, and EMS. They've all endorsed because I spoke to them, and it's about making sure that they have the resources and that the job is respected, so that people want to become officers, and that officers then have the resources that they need to actually go and enforce the law.
What about the migrant issues? Is that something which is affecting the community? Are there a lot of migrant housing in the area that the Assembly District encompasses?
100%. So this district has St. Agnes, which is currently a shelter right now. And it's the migrant issue is it's very complex. It's not black or white. It's very, very gray right now. But the reality is it's that these people that we're whose lives we're dealing with, right? This whole situation has been mishandled for many, many, many years, and it's become now it's a political game of whose fault is it now, and that has to stop. Right now, we just need decisive leadership on how to handle this problem. I know I'm limited in my capacity as a member of the assembly of what I would be able to do for this, but I would strongly advocate, if elected, right, for clear and concise leadership. And we can't be playing politics with people's lives right now, right? This affects the people who come here. This affects the people who live here. And we need, a real solution. We need community input when shelters are being brought in.
Did you have input in Queens? I know in Staten Island, they're going crazy over the migrant housing and some of the facilities there. I would assume that in Queens, people are probably not too happy to have a shelter right in their backyard.
No, the census people are not happy about it. From what we've heard, and I want to look into it more to better understand and see what's going on for myself. But from what I've heard, it's been relatively quiet at the St. Agnes shelter. Whether that's true or not, I can't confirm yet. But regardless, people are upset about it. Right?
Would that determine people how they're going to vote regarding the migrant situation in the election? Is that going to be a major factor?
It's hard to say. It's because it's a special. It's really hard to say if people are going to be so frustrated about this that they're going to get up and go vote. They're definitely willing to voice their concern over it, but are people willing to go out and vote solely on that issue, on a special election for the assembly, where it's not something that you're going to necessarily be able to tackle that issue? And it could be that people will, and it could be that they won't. And it's just something that I don't think we're going to know until the polls close.
How about crime? How much of a factor has crime gone up tremendously? You mentioned, of course, all the stores have a lot of the items under lock and key. It's not the way it used to be, but talk to us about crime. How major impact does crime have in the area?
I think it's less the crime itself. It's more the feeling in the air.
The fear of the crime, the fear of being a victim.
A lot of this is perception. And so that's like, there's just, with everything that's happened in the past few years, there's just a perception that crime is on the rise. There's a perception that you can, do anything you want and you'll get away with it and you won't be held accountable. And that needs to change. That's what I'm advocating to work towards, to change that, to realize if you do something illegal, you will be held accountable for it, because that's how we're going to make positive change.
Now, this race is unusual. They said at the onset, you have two Orthodox Jews pitted against one another, one Republican, one Democrat. You're the Democrat. Now, Orthodox Jews lately have been voting more Republican, and you've had Rabbanim and rabbis coming out supporting Republicans. So since you're religious and your opponent is religious, have rabbis come out supporting you? Have they been more neutral? Are you concerned about the fact that the Orthodox community tends to be more Republican? Do you have a harder job swaying people to push the Democratic lever? Let's look at the facts on the ground.
Yeah. So on the rabbinic support, I thought at the outset, in order to make this a Kiddush Hashem, it would be important to show where the rabbinic authority lies. And a lot of people felt strongly about this. This was why we have the personal endorsements of Rabbi Welcher, Rabbi Marcus, Rabbi Peretz Steinberg, Rabbi Pacht, who's the principal of Yeshiva Tiferes Moshe, which is a boys' elementary school, Rabbi Kessler, I believe, who's the principal of Yeshiva Katana, Rabbi Wexelbaum, who's the principal of Manos Malka, and many others have also endorsed, because this is really important for the community. Yes, I think on right now, more Orthodox Jews are leaning towards voting Republican, which is why we've had to have this conversation that, you can vote how you feel when it's a mayor or a governor or a president. It's a different conversation that has to be had for that. When we're talking about the assembly, right, it's a matter of, right, I think both my opponent and I have relatively similar values. But as a moderate Democrat, I'm able to actually deliver on some of the things that I'm trying to work towards and make a difference. And the things that a lot of the Orthodox Jewish community is concerned about, such as anti-Semitic bills that come out, a rise in that of the more extreme sides of the left, you're actually within the assembly able to combat that more than you ever could as a Republican. The numbers are there. There's currently 101 Democrats in the assembly, 48 Republicans in a minority, in a very, very large minority. Even if we were to flip this seat, even if we were able to flip 10 seats, which currently there's about 8 or 10 purple districts in the whole state. If you were to flip all of them red, let's say, right, yes, the Democrats would lose the super majority, but they would still have a massive majority. And when the doors close and they sit at the table to decide what's going to be the law, right, the Republicans don't have a seat there. And so our community would not have a seat there. And it would be horrible for the community. And what you end up doing is you've put a Republican who may, be against some of the extremism on the left, but you don't have anyone who can actually do anything against it. When last year there was the Not on Our Dime bill, which was a bill that was, I believe, very anti-Semitic. And it was Daniel Rosenthal, as a Democrat, who was able to get support from 65 other, I believe, Democratic assembly members to shut that bill down. What
did the bill encompass that it was deemed to be anti-Semitic? I remember the name, but
I believe it was going to cut off any funding, any government funding that was going to any charitable organization that was that if the organization would support Israel, it would be cut funding from them.
Terrible bill.
They're trying to push it again this year because Daniel stepped down. So if you take a Democrat out, a moderate Democrat, to be a voice against that, right? Even though you've put in a Republican, because they're in such a minority, they can't stop it from happening. You need someone in the Democratic Party to stand up for Orthodox Jewish values.
Now, since this race is in play, have you had support, leadership of the mayor or other stalwarts in the Democratic Party coming out on the campaign trail for you?
We certainly have a lot of support from a lot of the local elected officials, right? Jim Gennaro, Congresswoman Grace Meng, Congressman Meeks. We've had a lot of help from a lot of the different areas, people pitching in to send volunteers to help us with door knocking. Everyone is very, very invested in trying to, help us, win this race, knowing that it's a special election and getting people out is so hard. I believe the mayor and the governor, I think, are staying out of this race merely because, this district did go for Zeldin last year. So I think, even if they may want to help, it may not, favor in our direction right now.
So I think Lee Zeldin endorsed your opponent, David Hirsch. So how important a factor is Lee Zeldin since he lost the race for governor? Is he an important factor in the district still?
I don't know. I think it was. I think it was a. I think people were voting for Lee Zeldin less because of the character of Lee Zeldin, but more because of the level of being upset that people were. No, that's to rephrase. They were more upset with what had been done in New York on the side of the left. And it was less about Lee Zeldin himself, but that Lee Zeldin was the Republican running. I don't believe he's been in the community or in the district since he lost that race. I don't know how much his endorsement helps. I'm sure that it has some effect. He didn't come to the to the district, to work together with Hirsch. He made a video, I believe. That's about it. I don't know if that's going to help him or not. But
right. Now, here's the thing. You mentioned a few moments ago that the governor and the mayor are not coming because this district went for Lee Zeldin. So if the governor or the mayor were to stomp for you, would that help you get more of the Democratic base out? Or do you think it would be, or do they believe it would be harmful to you? Because it would make sense for them to stomp for you. If it could be, it's a very competitive race, one of the few competitive races around. So wouldn't it make more sense for them to be involved, a little bit more hands-on?
I think with this district being so, conservative and being so purple, we've just been focusing on having the people who are here at the local level to help us to work on making sure that we're there. It could be that you're right, that it will help us, but I don't know that it's, it's worth the risk. And I think that's what the consideration has been, whether or not it's worth the risk.
So their political strategist said it's not worth the risk. That's why they're not doing it. Is that what the basically?
I can't say what their political strategist has said. I know that I haven't personally received any call from the governor or the mayor.
Are there any debate schedule? Because usually you have debates. Is that something that you want or your opponent wants? Is that something which is likely to happen between now and Election Day?
I don't believe any debates are planned. I found that this being a special and it being such low turnout, with there's no drive or energy or reason for people to feel like they need to get up off their couch and go vote. The most effective strategy, I believe, has been to go out and talk to the actual people who live in the district. Every conversation I've had, even with people who are more leaning towards right now, has been positive overall. And so I've been working for the past month and a half to have those conversations as much as possible with as many people as possible within the community, not just the Orthodox Jewish community, but the district as a whole. So we've been trying to have those conversations because I think those casual conversations where you can contextualize these more complicated, national hot button issues, when you can contextualize it and have a conversation about it, it's a much more effective way of getting what you're about across to people.
Because at the end of the day, and you tell me if there's any prediction of numbers, a small amount of the neighborhood in the 27th Assembly District are going to come out to vote. So whoever is able to energize their base is going to be able to win the election. So first, do we have any idea of how many people are expected to vote in this race? And at the end of the day, it's going to be a question of motivation and how do you get them to go out and vote? They'll tell you, sure, I like what you're saying. I'm sure you're hearing that. The question is, were they going to come out and vote on Election Day?
Right. So we're getting that message across, explaining the urgency to people and why this is so important, and having our volunteers make sure that they're getting that message across. Having that conversation where it's early voting this week, you can go out and vote right now, and there's no lines because people are not showing up. You can go, and your voice is going to be heard. It's that idea of telling people that when you vote, because it's such a low turnout, your one vote may make all the difference. So go out and vote. That message gets across, and it gets people to show up.
And you found people said to you, I'm going to vote.
Not only that, they've sent me pictures of them voting.
Okay.
There's been a lot of enthusiasm within our own community. A lot of people are very, I've grown up here my whole life. A lot of people, know me or know my parents. So there's been a lot of feeling of support within the Orthodox Jewish community. People are just happy to, help out a family that, has tried to give so much to the community.
And I guess your parents can't send out a letter to this prospective schools to go out and vote for you. That wouldn't work. But
we certainly have a lot of support within the schools, but a school itself, I don't believe, is allowed to endorse.
By the way, as an aside, and this is one of my pet peeves, I'd love to see every school, when a child turns 18, give them a voter registration form. They can join any party they'd like to join. I'd like to see more of the schools doing that. Maybe that's something should be on the agenda, that there should be more people participating in the elections. And one way is getting young people by giving them a form at 18 saying that you must register. That's part of what the school policy is.
Right. I 100% agree. There's a lot of, especially of my generation, there's a lot of apathy when it comes to politics. People don't want to get involved, and people don't want to, be bothered when it comes to even things like just going out and voting. And what the younger generation, I'm trying to help people to realize is that all of the issues that you have in your day-to-day life, if it's your children's education, right, if it's your feelings of unease when it comes to public safety, if it's affordability issues, these are all things that you work on at the local level. And if you don't get involved, if you don't just take the time to go out and vote, right, then how can you expect to have positive change in your own area?
Well, I agree with you. And if you don't vote, you can't complain about crime and policies that you don't like if you're not part of the system. In order to have an impact, you got to be part. And I urge everybody, go out and vote. Final question. Your generation is not really into politics. That turned off by all the shenanigans that are going on in Washington and the fights between Republicans and Democrats. Have you gotten a lot of your people saying to you, are you Meshuggah? Why are you running? Have you had that from you?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest conversations that I had to have was I had my wife speak to Daniel Rosenthal's wife before we were thinking about whether or not we would do this, to make sure that this is something that we could do, having a family. But this is important. This is really important for our home in order for us to thrive, in order for our community to thrive, in order for the district to thrive. Right now, the state and the country are being pulled at two different extremes. There's extremism on the left and there's extremism on the right, and we're being pulled apart. And I find that most people are just sick and tired of it. But if we don't stand up, and if we don't come back to a more common sense mindset in the state legislature, in the federal legislature, if we don't come back down to the common sense things, the things that we can all agree with, if we can't find common ground, then the country's going to pull itself apart.
Sam Berger, community advocate, law school graduate, devoted father, running to replace the former Assemblyman Dan Rosenthal as the District 27 Assembly District in Queens. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.